Welcome to the afternoon session. This is Supreet Nagaraju from Adobe. And I'd like to start with the point that, creativity and digital is no longer an option. It's our future. But more so in the current scheme of things, we are not just in the world of digital and creative alone, but it's digital and creative first. Having said that, I'd like to introduce our eminent panel for today. I have with me to my left Dr. Jitin Chadha, who's the director of Indian Institute of Art and Design. Welcome, Dr. Jitin. I have Dr. Malini Shankar, Vice Chancellor of Indian Maritime University. Good afternoon and welcome, madam. Dr. Sabu, Chancellor of MG University. Yeah. Mr. Chaitanya Chinchlikar from Whistling Woods, Vice President of, Whistling Woods International. Dr. Anand Chakradiyo, welcome, sir, Pro VC of MIT University. Dr. Fidyas Deshpande, Vice Chancellor, Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University. So welcome one and all. Thank you for joining us for the session today. So one of the things that we often encounter, is the act of how do you build a thought of creative first mindset in the students and to be professionals in the current scheme of things. Problem solving has got a fabric clearly embedded to creativity in our day in, day out lives, right? Living and breathing brand and creating new brands is a function of how do you solve problems. And today, in a digital world, first world, we are looking at creativity as one of the key fabrics. So with that, let me start with the conversation of how do you, build the fabric of creativity in educational institutions and create the next generation creative first professionals. So let me start with, Chaitanya Chinchlikar first. And Chaitanya, over to you. If you could share your viewpoints on this, and then I'll take a round robin of the audience. If you can unmute yourself, all of you, Chaitanya.
Yes, sorry. Thanks, Supreet. Hello, everybody. That's a very interesting question, right? Because if you look at how education has progressed over, since we almost started to track the concept of education, we have moved from the from the Gurukuls of India and the academies of Greece to the one-to-many broadcast learning model with a one-size-fits-all model to what we have right now, which is essentially a lot of left brain analytical education, which goes into high school education. Some of it continues further. But more and more as we kind of embrace technology and we embrace the digital world, we notice that your problem solving, analytical, calculation, these things are being taken over by the artificial intelligence, computer vision, machine learning trio. So human skills are increasingly going to be applied for creative thinking, strategic thinking, lateral thinking, design thinking, right? And in order to develop that, you have to start pretty early. So, when you talk of creating a more creatively inclined individual, they don't necessarily have to be working in the creative or performing arts, right? A doctor, an engineer, a scientist, a researcher will be better at their jobs if they have a good exposure and a good understanding of creative thinking, strategic thinking, lateral thinking, and design thinking. So that's the approach that you have to do. You have to look at it as, what music does. So music is probably one of the few activities that we engage in actively at a young age, which uses both sides of the brain. And you've seen how continuous exposure to music and to continuous understanding of how music works makes everybody a better professional. So the idea to get into exercising the creative muscle, if you want to kind of use that phrase, of an individual, is to get them to change their approach to thinking everything. See, creativity is not something that you can keep in one pocket and remove and write on a piece of paper, right? It's an attitude. It's an attitude you bring to whatever task that you do. So I mean, you can cook in a creative way. You can sweep the floor in a very creative way, but you can paint in an extremely uncreative way. So we have to look at it more as an approach, more as something that you bring to whatever profession that you are in or whatever area that you are studying in. So that is how I would approach creative education. Of course, there will be some people who will take that and then say, okay, now let me apply this learning, this knowledge, this awareness I have into specific areas which employ a much higher degree of creative application than some of the other ones, right? So creative arts, performing arts, animation, film, fashion, design, music, etc., etc., etc. So the application of it and the learning of it are both kind of, one depends on the other, but are still separate. So you should look at the learning of creativity as something that should be done for all.
Right. Thank you, Chaitanya, for your views. Now let me move to Dr. Jitin Chedda. Dr. Jitin, you've been building one of the foremost art and design institution in the northern part of India. What are your thoughts? What are your views about creativity and breeding creativity first?
So firstly, Supri, thank you for having me in the panel, and good afternoon to everyone. Pleasure to be part of this. Chaitanya has already mentioned a lot of things I would have said, and I'll try to just add on a few more things and slightly a different perspective on the matter. I think, us as educators, first of all, we need to apply creativity to our own way of delivering education. I think we've spent way too long in the chalk and talk model, and educators themselves have to first be creative in order to create creative students thinking. I'll give you an example of, so really I come from a design school background, so everything we do is creative. But more importantly is how we conceive the school and why we conceive the school. It was for us an experiment on pedagogy. So our design school is completely studio based. We have no classrooms. We don't have a system where students are facing one side and there's a preacher on the other end who preaches through lectures and whiteboards. It's a collaborative learning process. So we have tried to experiment a lot with how you can deliver education in a more creative manner. And I think all of us really need to focus on that a lot more, and that will further inspire students themselves through act of creativity on how we deliver education, creativity in our pedagogy. So learning has become far more collaborative. Students, the role of a faculty is that of a facilitator and a moderator, I would say in our case, where the idea is to spark debate and discussion and dialogue. Rather than, not even necessarily lead a discussion, we have experimented with peer assessment, and we have found that when you do peer assessment, they actually mark each other more stringently than a faculty would have marked. So there are many, many interesting and creative ways to approach education and pedagogy itself. Um, so that is something we've tried in our design school for the last 6 years, and we've been really excited about the outcome it's creating. We need to focus on making students fall in love with learning again, right? They should look forward to coming to an environment where I would say, in higher education, instead of today or tomorrow, has to be more like a co-working space. It's a collaborative space, and especially COVID has taught us, if anything else, one thing that you can deliver the lecture part of the core content in any form, through Zoom call, through put the content on a learning management system. And we have invested at least a lot of our time and effort with our faculty and team to change our orientation on how we should be delivering education. So it's a huge mindset change. It's a huge pedagogical change. It's not easy to change the mindset of the people who've been delivering academia in a certain way in this country to change radically. But so to me, in the context, because here, Supri, the audience is educators. So I thought how we can first be more creative before preaching about creativity further.
So absolutely. So in fact, I just want to add like one line to him. So when we start, right, or when we start our faculty training, the the first line on the training presentation says, the goal is to teach the student that when you have forgotten what you studied for your exams, what remains is education. Right? So if everybody is able to think that way, then you've done your job.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Jatin. Chaitanya, thank you for your one-liner. Let me now move over to one of our eminent speakers from Indian Maritime University. Let me just give a quick introduction here to Dr. Malini as well. So Dr. Malini is not just the Vice Chancellor of Indian Maritime University. She's been in her earlier stint the Director of General Shipping and also Secretary to the Government of India in her past life, and she currently also holds the board of director role in few of the organizations, including ILFS and World Maritime University. Ma'am, a different world, a different spectrum of institution. What are your thoughts? It's interesting to hear what maritime universities are.
Okay, in the beginning, I'll just continue in the same vein as the previous two speakers. I think all human beings are born creative. And unfortunately, I think most of us will agree that it's the education system which spoils the creativity. I think almost all of us would agree with that. So I'm going to relate one experience I had. So creativity is not taught. Creativity does not have to get introduced. Creativity has to be stimulated. In fact, you have to, like they said, you have to forget what you've learned and the rest of it, you have to stimulate for being creative. So I remember when I was doing my PhD abroad, there was this, two professors who came to present it was a symposium, it was a colloquium. One was a biologist and one was a chemist. So the biologist would go around, observing insect behavior. And for example, I still remember, this was about 35, 40 years ago, but I remember what the presentation was. And that's the skill of, a professor or a researcher to be able to present something that you can recall after 40 years. So the biologists observed the insect behavior. And this particular one was on pheromones. And then the chemist would go around, they would extract that liquid and then try to synthesize that in the lab. So, and the application was obviously, for this particular project, it was in the perfume industry. But the reason I'm saying this, it stimulates ideas. It's a cross-pollination of ideas that leads to creativity. And I think whether it is a school or whether it is the university, we need the students, the children, to be exposed to a whole wide variety of ideas. They have these horse blinds and they're running this race of just exams and then marks and rank and jobs. But if you can just open them up a little bit at a time, there is a system, we can't beat the system totally, but you open little bit at a time for them to absorb these ideas, listen to a whole variety. There's a cross-pollination of ideas that stimulates creativity. And that in turn leads to innovation. Innovation can't come like a parachute descending from somewhere.
Thank you, Dr. Malini. Let me now move over to Dr. Sabu Thomas. Just a quick pointer about Dr. Sabu Thomas. He's been a researcher himself, and currently holds the role of Vice Chancellor at Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala. What I'm keen to understand, and the viewers would also, I'm sure, would be on what is it that we could do in terms of stimulating creativity, particularly from universities of your category, where you're looking at science, technology, and design as the forefront of growth. Mahatma Gandhi University, I think, has got varieties of programs that you have both on science and design as an area. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, it's the first point I wanted to tell you is, I'm leading lots of people with me, lots of young people work with me. The first thing I always give importance, you have to have a right ecosystem. I'm leading a big group of people, PhD students. You have to create a right ecosystem for them. You have to give them lots of freedom to think independently. You see, that's what I do. I get a lot of new ideas from youngsters. I give them a problem. I always tell them you have to read well. Reading is extremely important. If you want to be creative, you have to have very good, strong, knowledge base. You see, I have lots of PhD students working with me. I ask them to you read, well, especially high-ranking journals, Nature, Science, etc. So reading is very important. You have a very good knowledge base. And you give them lots of freedom to the students to think independently. Then new ideas will come. That's my experience with young PhD students. You have to create the right ecosystem. You have to allow them to, think independently. And you have to appreciate, you need to interact with them, get feedback from them. And then if you have a critical intervention, I'm sure, we can have fantastic new ideas from the young students. This is my experience with young students. You have to really give them lots of, independence, autonomy. You assign them some of the programs, I've given them teamwork. New ideas have come. And I always tell them that, you have to really publish in high impact journals. High impact journals, if you publish something in Nature or Science, your idea should be very strong, very new. And I always ask them to, think independently, think out of the box. This is what way I drive my PhD students.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sabu. Let me now move over to Dr. Anand Chakradio. He's been a designer himself, and of course, he's been leading change in the design space. And I'm, of course, looking at art, design, and technology as a, medium to bring up MIT ADT in the overall scheme of design education. Sir, over to you.
Actually, point number one is we must understand as educators that every individual is different. Unfortunately, our education system places everyone on same bench and tries to, measure them with same yardstick. And it starts from school education. Fortunately, many schools, many patterns like IB is there, IGCSE is there, CBSE is there. They have changed over the time, and they have changed drastically, and they have introduced so many new concepts in education, and they have started treating every individual student in different way. That's a good thing for our country, because after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, these kids will be there in higher education, and then they will be, from a philosophy where individual is supposed to groom on its own. So we must understand that. Point number two is we creative education. So creativity as a skill is different than creativity as a thought process. So creativity as a skill, it will be there or it will not be there. Let's be very honest, you cannot teach painting to a person who doesn't understand anything about that. So either it will be there or it will not be there. Don't try to make a non-creative person, try to mold him into creative skills. So that is about skills. But creativity as a thought process, yes, it can be inculcated. It can be there in all walks of life. It can be there in marine engineering. It can be there in engineering. It can be there in bioengineering. It can be there everywhere. People only talk about creativity in terms of design, in terms of art, in terms of film, in terms of animation, but that is not the true. Even a bioengineering guy can be more creative. When a piston moves in a cylinder, I see it as the most the best piece of creativity, engineering solution, because it requires a lot of effort. So we'll have to look into that definition of creativity. Second important thing is we must promote various ways of learning. First of all, learning when it is absolutely required. We should not force anybody to learn anything. They will learn on their own. They must understand that they must learn this, and then only we should present them a book or some other thing. So learning when it is absolutely essential, that should be our pedagogy. Second, learning to learn. We must allow them, we must prepare them for learning to learn. Most importantly, we must prepare them for learning to unlearn. We come across many students who are, even we as an individuals, we are not willing to leave our baggage aside. When I talk to people, I'm first mechanical engineer, then I'm something else, then I'm something else, and then I'm a professor or a professional. So we'll have to keep our baggage aside if we really want to get into creative format of education. And for that matter, I say, I feel that delivery of whatever you are doing has the most prominent role to play. I'm 100% sure that everything, it can be geography, it can be civil engineering, it can be construction management, it can be as hardcore as boilers, can be taught in the most creative way. The only thing is we need to have faculty who understand that approach, and then it's possible to inculcate, then it is possible to groom our our next generation, and that's how it's going ahead. I'll not talk much about design education because I think eventually it will come, but I'm of firm opinion that any program in the world can be taught in the most creative way. We just will have to change our glasses, change our perspective. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. Let me move on to Dr. Hridas Deshpande. Quick introduction of Dr. Deshpande. He's currently the Vice Chancellor of Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University. Also, he sits on the IDC India Design Council advisory and has been on few of the corporate advisory roles as well in the past. Dr. Deshpande, you've been a proponent, you've been advising, and you've been raising a lot of new academic leaders in the design space. So what are your thoughts? What are the new innovations that you've been bringing in the design education, and now, of course, the broader scheme of things from Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University standpoint? If you can unmute yourself, sir.
So many thanks for inviting me to this August forum. First of all, I must make a small correction that I am no longer with the India Design Council. I think the council itself does not exist anymore, as much is known of it. So that's what's the current status. But yes, when I was a part of the India Design Council, got an opportunity to do a lot of things there, and which may or may not see the light of the day is another matter. So that's a thing which we leave it for some other day. But I think it's a very opportune time to discuss these things, especially when we are challenged on all assumptions. We were so used to in-person contact that we never imagined anything else. And I think the president has driven us into exploring different forms. And that's what is my first thing, that why do we wait for a catastrophe all the time for making any changes to how we do things? And same goes for education, I suppose, because we all know there is enough amount of literature that is available, that how the world is changing, how the world future of work is going to be. And I'm not going to bore anymore on that because everything is known about it in the literature. The question is, are we going to wait for another catastrophe of young people who are going to be jobless and are going to come to the throats of the rulers or the powers to be and then demand a change? Or we are going to do something on our own in a manner which actually looks at the future and not at the past? Because what we see is today in 2021, what we are doing is actually continuing what was started in 1910, when Frederick Winslow Taylor came up with his management theory. It has been 110 years now. We are managing things in the same manner. And similarly for education, Andrew Carnegie Foundation came up with Carnegie Unit to measure education and deliver education. That became the Credit R Unit. And we are still doing the same. And we all know how much the things have changed. So I would simply say that this is a time where we have to actually leave all the past systems totally aside. There is enough technology available to measure the credential. There is enough technology that is available to measure the outcomes of a student's learning or any learner. When we say student, I would broadly classify it as any learner. And even at the peril of my own business, I would say that why do you need universities, colleges, and institutions as structures at all if learning is what is possible between two people? One is a willing giver and one is a very willing receiver. And when that kind of format can exist, why do we need such thing? Without going to that extreme of a utopian scenario, I would certainly say that the problem has been what gets measured is what gets performed kind of a scenario, right from the uh, institutions which are the accrediting institutions to institutions like us, that is the university. We are all always interested in measuring how much the teacher has taught, measuring how much the student has learned, and that to be measured in terms of hours and stuff like that, quantitative measure. And our penchant for doing that is actually destroying the very fabric, what we call as education. And I don't think it's future focused. So we'll have to fundamentally have a relook at it in terms of a structural view of it, and have to develop a much more open mind towards acknowledging different forms of learning, and actually first of all start with dismantling these central institutions in the first place.
Thank you, Dr. Deshpande. Now, let me switch gears to a next subject, which is more towards how do we derive solutions to the core problems of the current context, in the current context, right? We all know we are in a VUCA world, right? It's volatile, it's complex, it's changing, and the challenges that are thrown at us, both for the students and for the faculty and for the institutions to assimilate and figure out solutions to it. One of the common areas that we've always seen is designing, going to the drawing board, designing, thinking, and innovating. And no doubt, design-led innovation has always thrown India in the forefront of success, both within and outside as well. So, bringing to the context of design-led innovations, how can we bring this into the education system so that we can drive, the next generation success? How can we sculpt design thinking within our students and ensure that they are prepared for addressing most complex challenges which may come up in the immediate and the near future as well? So let me start, with Dr. Sabu first. Let's understand his thoughts both from an employability and also from an entrepreneurship standpoint as to how we could look at, sculpting professionals for the future, particularly in the current context of challenges that we have.
My idea is, you see, if new ideas come, immediately we will give possibility to incubate. See, Mahatma Gandhi University has started a very good incubation center. And we have a large number of PhD students. So what we found is if some new ideas come from a student and a faculty member, university immediately give them space and money to incubate this technology. See, within a short period of time, since I introduced this in the campus, within a short period of time, a lot of youngsters came with new ideas we could incubate. And some of the technologies, even there were, takers, to scale up. So one of the ways to encourage innovation is, if you find new ideas, you encourage these new ideas and try to give them possibility to testify the idea. That means it's so-called incubation facilities. So the country should have a large number of incubators. That's why many universities are really interested to do that. We also started. Additionally, my university also started a company in the campus, Mahatma Gandhi University Innovation Foundation. The new ideas come, and we incubate it, and we can develop into technology. And if you look at the recent ACS statistics, ACS says, American Chemical Society says, if you look at the 85% of the products in the market, they're all spin-off from the universities. Therefore, we have to create such an ecosystem at the universities. Then, if you do that, I'm sure a lot of technologies could be developed. This is my suggestion, and I'm working in that direction in the university.
Thank you, Dr. Sabu. Let me move over to Dr. Jitin Chedda in a similar point.
Sorry, Supreet, I couldn't hear you clearly. What were you saying?
Yeah. I was saying that, your thoughts and views on design-led innovations and how we could sculpt the next generation professionals in this space.
So we all know, I think it's widely acknowledged that the focus is a lot on human-centered design, sustainability, and innovation. I think our approach has been to take it outside the classroom. I mean, for example, we have a course in fashion designing where we have a project on denim, and as part of, let's say, what we call it, the denim project, we are design school based in Delhi. Students go to the Arvind Mills in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and they see how a mill denim is created, right? What are they doing in terms of sustainable practices and so on and so forth. That's large scale manufacturing. But at the same time, they also went and explored something called khadi denim, right? So you got to show them both the extremes. There is the industrial production of denim, and there is a sustainable homegrown denim production. So the idea is to expose students to, if you want to teach them sustainability, you have to go and show them sustainable practice as well. Or another example is that in our fashion program, a lot of fashion schools put on the website that their students went to Milan or Paris or New York Fashion Week, and you put those nice, lovely photographs. Our students also go there occasionally, but for our projects, we send our students to a small village, maybe at the border of Rajasthan or somewhere in Kutch, right, where they actually spend a week with the artisans. How do you create empathy when you haven't put the student in that situation as part of their education? So in that sense, you can call it a fancy word as experiential learning. But if our objective is to create empathy, create user-centered design, talk about sustainability, it has to not only be woven into the curriculum, but it has to be experienced by the student. That's just one of many examples that we're trying to experiment to see that those are things they won't forget. You spend a week in a village, completely impoverished. You have a different level of empathy. You know a little bit more about the country and how those guys are contributing to the apparel sector in the country. So largely on these lines, we try to implement what we think as a vision of our institution into our curriculum. And anyway, we teach through projects. As I said, we don't have classrooms, we don't have subjects. So the idea is to really weave it into, the practice of whatever you're talking about, because merely talking about sustainability or equity or, empathy as a subject, I don't think it's going to stick with them for a long time.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Jitin. Let me move over to Dr. Malini. Madam, your views on design-led innovations and how do you breed, or sculpt new professionals? If you could unmute yourself.
So in the context of higher education, I'd like to divide, what I'm going to say into three parts. There's pedagogy, there's evaluation of the learning process, and the employability. As far as pedagogy goes, I think like someone had mentioned before me, I think we are following the same pattern over 100 years, and something has to change. There's a disruption, and hopefully this will change it. I was reading an article on cognitive science, which said that, over a period of time, last 30 to 40 years, how has technology influenced the cognitive capabilities? So at a time when we did not have TV, people could read a book for 3 hours at a time. And over a period of time, now forget TV, this phone and the social media. So the span of attention of the child is just about a few minutes. So how does a teacher adapt himself or herself to impart this knowledge or to stimulate the process of learning in this reduced span of time? So and the solution is actually, one of the solutions is to make it more interactive, and this is what everybody is trying to do today. That's pedagogy. When it comes to evaluation, the same thing. Your classroom teaching, which leads to exams and a centralized evaluation process. And I think if you've been reading the newspapers in the past few months, you will realize that online examinations are the only practical solution, but it is not the ideal solution. So I think in the future, we have to move towards open book exams, which will actually make the students learn something on their own. It'll be knowledge. It will not be something that, it's garbage in, garbage out. Sorry, I don't mean to be run down the education system, but it's GIGO. So the student comes for learning, and an open book exam, I think, will allow it. And in the university, in IMU, we have resolved that we will go to start slowly opening up the system to say that at least one paper every semester can we do open book exam. And the third part is employability. Having worked in the industry sector for many, many years, this is from the point of view of government, there's a constant feedback that I used to get is just about maybe 15 to 17% of the engineers are employable, and the percentage has been going down over time. One of them actually told me, we can teach them the technology, but we cannot teach them communication. We cannot teach them soft skills. I remember asking a fresh batch of engineers in the irrigation department to say, can you, sit down in half an hour and give me an estimate, a rough estimate for a bridge to be built over a stream of just 30 meters or even 10 meters. And out of 200 engineers, only 5 could do it, not because they were skilled or they were adept at it, but because they already had work experience. So how do you impart these skills, especially communication skills? Very Indians are their weak point, especially in South India, is they're very strong in the content, but not as strong in communication. So last year in the IMU, last semester, when this whole pandemic broke out and then, they had to move suddenly to online classes. And we said, communication cannot be taught. It's not English grammar and composition, cannot be taught overnight. It's something you acquire over a period of time. It's an engagement between the teacher to passionately, nurture that skill over years. So one of the exercises we took is, there's myriad of webinars going around. It's in the field of in the maritime sector. And the best of professionals and the experts were actually talking worldwide, and you had access to it. So we told the students that you just listen to the webinar of your choice and then give us a report of just 300 words as to what the webinar is about. What is it something you learned new from the webinar, and what did you learn about yourself on the personal front? For example, how to make a presentation, how to tell a story. It is amazing how much it contributes to the concepts of listening, grasping, comprehending, and having a clarity of thought and expression. So I think we need to introduce these exercises rather than stick within this structured thing of this is classroom, this is syllabus, this has to be covered, and you have to prepare for the exam. So there are baby steps that we are taking, and hopefully many, many institutions will take this to open up the students to better ideas, open up the students to observing. We've stopped observing. We all say live in the now, live in the present, but we've stopped observing. We're just looking at the destination without looking at the journey itself. And I think that's very important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Malini. There have been a couple of questions that have been pouring in, and I think there is a context to the subject that we are discussing right now as well. And I'll take this contextual question as well in between. Dr. Anant, there is a question that's specifically come in specifically on national education policy implementation, and how do you drive learning outcomes with creative education as an area. So if you could throw light, and I think it's got a correlation with respect to how do you breed creative professionalism within the current scheme of things as an area as well. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, so it's good that the topic of national education policy has been there. See, national education policy broadly talks about liberalness in education. So they are not talking about liberal education. They are talking about liberalness in education. So in the sense, we need to implement in true sense, in 100% with 100% sincerity the choice-based credit system. At present, what universities are doing under the title of choice-based credit system is they just give few electives and they call it a choice-based credit system. So we'll have to think right from start, right from the base, and that's what is talked about in national education policy. Second important thing which national education policy talks about is developing a 360-degree personality. So you are an education provider, so you will certainly you'll make engineer an engineer, you'll make designer a designer, you'll make economist an economist. But what are you doing to that fellow beyond economics or beyond engineering or beyond design? That's the question, and that is very well said and talked in new education policy. Third important point is integration of various streams. So you should create an ecosystem which allows a student to try something from art, something from humanities, something from engineering, something from, let's say, economics, something from design, and that's what might make that person, a better person, a better professional than what it would have been. So integration of various streams at undergrad level is very essential. And this is what we are doing at MIT Art, Design and Technology University. I'll not speak much about that, but name itself suggests that there are programs on art, there are programs on design, there are programs on technology, and there is an integration through a system which happens there. The first point, which was design-led innovation, I think we need to literally stop using those words like design thinking. It is so overused, believe me. We'll have to stop using. Instead of that, we should talk about creative thinking. We should talk about critical thinking. We should talk about problem solving. Design thinking, it has become, the keyword. Everyone talks about it without understanding what exactly it is. So when you're talking about design-led innovation, I think we have experienced it. We have incubation center, let's say. Those incubation activities or those startups are successful wherein there is a designer right from start at director position. So I think design should go in boardroom, design should go at director level, design should go in corporations. Then only we can talk about design-led innovation. Otherwise, there is enough of technological innovation which is happening, and design is just treated as cosmetic activity. Once everything is done, now the thing goes to the designer to just facelift the thing. That should not be the approach. If that is the approach, then it will be very difficult. Most important thing, we'll have to convert all the courses into project-based courses. We need not teach theory. They will learn theory if they want. We'll have to give them projects. We'll have to give them problems. Let them solve the problems. We can try. There are some universities which are doing that, like Quest University. If you see their website, the student, when joins the undergraduate program, he joins with a problem statement which he wants to solve in his life. So the entire curriculum, entire education for that particular person revolves around that problem statement. So we should think completely different way. Like in Olin College of Engineering in Boston, they don't give admission to any particular discipline of engineering. The moment the student joins, he's put up on a project. And he's put up on a project along with second year, third year, fourth year students. There is a group of students which work. There is a lot of peer learning happens. This peer learning concept is also missing. So if we really want to get into design-led innovation, I think we should support technological innovation with creative thinking, with problem-solving capabilities. And from that angle, every student must be equipped with those problem-solving things. Another important thing before I forget, coding is breathing. No matter in which discipline you are, even if you are a lawyer, you must know coding. I think it has gone to that extent. So you should not forget these important features of education if you want to change the the way in which education is being done. And that's what is talked in new education policy. It's good that new education policy is coming up. I don't know whether it will be successful, not successful, but at least thought process wise, it's a good change for Indian higher education system.
Thank you, Dr. Anant. Let me move over to Dr. Hridyas Deshpande. A relevant question which is coming in specifically in terms of how we could drive change in the pedagogy of teacher training. How do you create a creative teacher in the current scheme of things? Yeah, over to you, sir. If you can unmute yourself.
It's a very, very valid question I think you have asked, because unfortunately in higher education we never had any kind of a formal teacher training methodology which has been there. So certainly there has been a lack of it. As of one of the higher education branches, we had education department for B.Ed, M.Ed and all that kind of thing, but that cohort went to the schools, and then they produced all those children who they spoiled over the 12 years and then sent to us for us to improve upon them in 4 years' time. I mean, and then people like us who are non-trained teachers are supposed to work on them in that limited 4 years time period and make something of them. Can you just imagine the amount of paradox that is got over here? And that having said that, I think teacher training, there are two aspects to it. One, and in fact, to an extent, there has to be a learner training also, because even learning to learn is also a very important ability, which again is assumed in higher education, that a learner has the ability to learn, and which also assumed that the teacher has the ability to teach. Now, both of these assumptions, they kind of come together, and since both of them are devoid of it, they say, okay, both we each other will survive together and say each other to be good. So that's the kind of a common understanding that largely we have all reached, and nobody raises a voice about it. Having said so, I think teacher training, there are two parts to it. One is how to teach is a very important aspect, and which I think as a university we should do. In fact, 2 years back at our university, with this specific purpose, we created a Center for Learning and Teaching. And we put learning first, because from the same premise, what I was saying, and similarly on teaching. And as a part of the Center for Learning and Teaching, the idea is to develop the capacity amongst the teachers to be able to teach well, not only in terms of delivery of the content, but also use various methodologies which are available as a part of the research outcomes of many, many good people out there, including evaluations and stuff like that. Similarly, for the learner side also, there has been a lot of training and programs that we have been organizing, so that the students are also able to appreciate what's going on. So it is something which has to be done at a much more wider level, and I would definitely suggest that it should go on. Second part is to keep the teachers abreast with what is going on as a part of their subject area, for which now, because of the UGC, NAC and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of faculty development programs that are going on in various universities. And some of them are average, some of them are real good, but there is a good movement on that. So both of these aspects are there in some kind of a momentum, but they need to be strengthened, and they need to be done in a more structured manner than what it is being done presently in the manner it is. Also, just to touch base upon a very, very simple thing where it started about the design-led innovation kind of a thing, where this second round of things started, I just would like to add a thing that is, see, in design thinking, as Anand sir said, that it's a very overused word because everybody started using it. But at the heart of it, if you look at it, there are two words. It's a step process. So first of all, it's very important to understand that creativity, innovation can't be serendipity. It has to be a structured process. And that being a structured process, it follows certain steps. The design thinking, in a way, put a structure to it. And the first step was empathy. Second thing was understand. And third is idea. So it doesn't start with ideation. Otherwise, you get ideas dime a dozen. In forums like this, I have also given some useless ideas maybe, and I know equally well that those useless ideas are not going to be possible. So ideas are free, but if you follow a design thinking process, start with the empathy and understanding, and then ideate. What you're essentially doing is problem framing. And I think problem solving is again a wrong thing to do, because problem solving is a very limited part of a larger spectrum where you are working on what is given to you. As against that, if you're looking at problem framing and you are able to identify a problem worth solving, and then going after it with all the tools and wherewithal that you have got, then there is a better possibility of success and its acceptability to the end user or the purpose for it is meant for. And that is what will have to be in a lot of way enmeshed into the delivery of education in the way the curriculums are structured. That how can we encourage the understanding, empathy, and then create problems worth solving and then go after it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Das Deshpande. Let me move on to Chaitanya. Quickly, if you can touch upon, you've been leading a very diverse, bunch of faculties for different walks of visual, appealing, deliveries, right? So how do you get these audience, mind share, and more important than anything, faculty's innovation to get more attention span, 45 minutes to an hour, I don't know, and we are in a mode of, preach what you practice kind of a zone. So what are your thoughts around how can you catch attention span of students?
Sure. Cool. Thanks. Just can I share a slide? Can somebody activate my thing?
I'm not sure if we have a slide activated. If you could go on, Chaitanya, I think we have.
So essentially, what we look at is, so we have a couple of advantages. One is that in our case, faculty don't have an option, because the industry is so dynamic, and because most of them, almost all our faculty are working professionals. So it's not like they can keep themselves devoid of what is happening out there. So if I have an editing faculty, he's also an editor out there in the industry. Or if I have a DOP, cinematography faculty, he or she is shooting content, right? So they can't keep themselves not at the cutting edge of things. In fact, people join Whistling Woods in order to enable themselves to be at the cutting edge of things, because we continue to focus on ensuring that the campus is ready, the students are ready. So our goal is to have students 6 months ahead of the curve when they graduate, right? So the whether it's innovation, whether it's professional kind of approach to, and which is really where I wanted to share a slide. Is it not possible? I mean, it's Zoom, right? Just
it is Zoom, yeah. Can we have it, Shivam? Can we just have this activated for a quick minute?
So, it helps us to, it'll help you to understand how we think, because see, there are certain goals that an educational institution is supposed to fulfill. And then there are certain...
you can share your slide, Chaitanya. Sorry.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So there you go. Right. So if you look at it, right, so there are certain goals that we have, that we seek to achieve, and there are certain tools that we have at our disposal. So our goals are employment, entrepreneurship, and research. And the tools that we have at our disposal are education, training, and enabling ideation. So the idea is when you structure your academic pedagogy, and this is not so much about pedagogy, this is more about teaching methodology, right? When you do structure it, you have to take this matrix into mind. So when I am teaching a particular thing which broadly would fit under training, which for us is more on how to use equipment, how to use hardware, how to use software, how to use workflows. Am I ensuring that this training is enabling the student to be a better employer, a better employee, better employer, and a better innovator, and include in research? Same thing for education. Same thing for the application of these things. So when you're doing this, by the end of the program, the students themselves are already innovators. They're already opened up to research, and they don't even know it, right? Because it's not like you've made a separate thing. Acha, abhi hum aapko research sikhayenge, or right now we will make you we will teach you how to be innovative. It's not that. Just blend it into the delivery and the teaching methodology, so that employment, entrepreneurship, and research all are delivered as part of their education. Now, when you've got the faculty who are exactly these things in their own personal real life, what we have to do is just keep exposing them to the stuff that's coming up new. Right? So say Sony is going to launch a new camera 2 years from now, because we're running a technology development lab with Sony. I have access to it 18 months before commercial launch. All I have to do is make sure that I put the faculty in front of it along with a technician or trainer from Sony and say, there you go. Within 3 weeks, I have now a bunch of faculty who are the only people in India who know how to teach on that camera or on that workflow. And it applies for everything. It applies for virtual reality, applies for virtual production, which we are doing right now. It applies for all those areas, right? So essentially, it's about the output that we seek of this, high profile, not high profile, but, well endowed, well-rounded faculty who are going on to create well-rounded students, is a factor of the culture and the teaching methodology that you built into the school. So that's how we look at it.
Thank you, Chaitanya. Actually, you took the conversation to my next subject, which I wanted to bring in, which is on the role of technology and tools and the impact on the role of teacher and student collaboration and deliver clear-cut learning outcomes in that area. So let me take a quick a round of views from all of you, 2 to 3 minutes each. Let me start with Dr. Jitin. Dr. Jitin, over to you.
Sorry, Supreet, could you just repeat the question again?
Yeah, role of technology and tools in shaping students' future and delivering clear learning outcomes.
Right. Yes. Why I'm smiling is, we had a plan of outlay of technology over the next 5 years, about a year ago, more than a year ago, and we've implemented that in the last 9 months, like I guess most other institutions in the country. So, there's a saying that never miss a crisis. So we took the opportunity to upskill ourselves with technology, and more importantly, how our faculty will use that technology, which is the harder part actually in the whole thing. So there are many learning management systems out there. We employed one of them. We are also partnered with one of the world's renowned company for learning. They have an amazing content library. So we had all these things in the works because basically our design programs are in collaboration with Kingston School of Art, Kingston University, London. And as far as technology implementation is concerned, I think they're well ahead of the curve than we are. And because we were collaborating with them, and there's been a conversation to implement similar technology at our institution, and COVID happened, and I think we really took the opportunity and ran with it. I'll tell you two things, and I'm sure everybody here has implemented some kind of a learning management system, and Zoom and Team is not a learning management system, that's just a video conferencing system. Sometimes people get confused between the two. To be able to host content, to be able to have assessments done online and other effective collaborative tools. But the challenge I think we'd faced, and a lot of other institutions probably are facing, it will continue to face, is how to onboard faculty to use it more effectively. Right? We can have a world-class LMS, or we use LinkedIn Learning, or we use Miro for collaborative tools, and many other softwares. But the question is like, you're giving a Ferrari to somebody, but you need to know how to drive a Ferrari. Otherwise, you're not making most of it. And for us, going back to the earlier question of Dr. Deshpande mentioned about faculty training and development, I don't think you can teach online the way you teach offline. You have to change the mindset. You have to reinvent your academic delivery and completely to a large extent. And we were kind of fortunate because we have a collaboration, and our collaborating partner does a lot of, they have a department of learning and teaching within their university in UK. And we had access to all those resources. And of course, they were upskilling their faculty, we were upskilling ours with them. They had implemented learning management system 5 years ago. So we could lean on them to be able to upskill our faculty with their training and development tools to be able to effectively use it. And it's been a very steep learning curve in the last 9 months. We are much better as a faculty to use those tools today than we were, let's say, in August. And I think they're all here to stay. It's not for us a short-term arrangement. We have partnered LinkedIn Learning for a 3-year contract. We've just partnered with Adobe. We're giving the Creative Cloud licenses to all our students. So for us, the idea of education going forward is not a question of whether it's online or offline. It could be offline for 3 months. We might go back to online after that, and this might go on for a while. It's the way we look at it. It's omni-channel or hybrid, right? Whether we are teaching online or offline, we're going to continue to use various tools and technology, and actually increased our budget 4 times for technology in the last 1 year alone. And I think that's going to be here to stay. But that does, I think institutions who are able to do that successfully will open up an opportunity to teach beyond their campus. There is no reason to say that why can't we teach courses where, at least for working professionals, who we can deliver online. And delivering design online has been a greater challenge than, say, delivering a social science program online, or a management program online. But it's been a very interesting experience. And what we've all found out is that it's possible. If I had told our faculty 18 months ago that, let's teach a design degree online, they would have thought that I've gone mad. But today, minds have shifted. They do believe that there is a possibility. In fact, if COVID didn't happen, we wouldn't have been there. So thanks to COVID, because we had no choice, and the faculty literally had no choice but to take the technological challenge hand on and use it. And like any other software tool, whether it's Excel or PowerPoint, the more you use it, the better you get at it. So definitely technology is a very important aspect of what we are doing and how we're going to deliver, how we are delivering education in the last 9 months. But for us, it's going to be a very, very important part of how the future delivery will pan out. And particularly given I assume here mostly brick and mortar institutions will be facing challenges with the edtech companies and pure online players. So I think it's an opportunity for us to upskill ourselves and be able to address perhaps a wider audience outside the walls of a campus. So it's been a very interesting experience.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Jitin. Let me move over to Dr. Anant. Your views, sir, on the role of technology and tools.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Jitin on one point that in February 2020, if I would have asked this question to my faculty, whether design can be taught online, everybody would have refused. But now after 16, 17 months of teaching learning, we all are 200% sure, 200% confident that it is possible. And not only for design, it is possible to teach any creative program online. That's what is proved. This can be, it can be a little difficult for courses like film, because if you want to shoot, you want to shoot. There is no other option. For School of Drama, if you want to rehearse, you are supposed to rehearse. There is no other option than. But for all other programs, it's quite possible. Like I can give you one example of a 73-year old faculty member, Manu Bhai, who teaches typography, and he is an old school of thought type of professor teaching typography for decades. And since last April, he's teaching typography online. And I told my faculty members, if Manu Bhai can do it, I think we should not have any reason to say no to any of the technology. I myself was not aware of many of the things which were there in the domain. But in last 1 year, we all have gone through that learning process. Everybody has tried their best. In fact, you will not believe faculty members have worked day and night, 24/7 in last 1 year without knowing whether their salaries will be deposited, not deposited. They have worked 24/7 in last 12, 13 months, and they have delivered. They have proved that it's possible to use technology, and now they are confident. So here onward, the journey would be completely different. Here onwards, we'll not leave without technology. Here onwards, we'll not leave it aside. We'll take technology along with us. We can convert all our activities into hybrid activities. If possible, online activities also, we can cover larger scope. Working from home is a reality. Working from anywhere is also becoming a reality. Like that, learning from anywhere is also becoming a reality. So we need to understand that and change our structure. Probably we may not require brick and mortar type of spaces after change in our thought process. But yes, technology is going to be there. We must make use of all the technological tools which are available today, which are coming up. And we should see that whenever such type of crisis comes, I think we are shifting from classroom to complete online within fraction of second. I think we should be ready and we should follow that. And that's what we all are doing, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Anant. I have a cue from the streaming team that we are out of time, but I'll quickly take a minute from Dr. Malini and Dr. Sabu and Dr. Hridayas Deshpande before we wrap up here. If you could just, share your viewpoints on technology and, tools. Let me start with Dr. Malini quickly for a quick minute, ma'am.
Yeah,
Sorry for the paucity of time.
Yeah, I'll try to be very brief. There is a theory in evolutionary economics that originated in France, which is called the theory of disruption, and it leads to new solutions. And that's what's happening now. But when you say technology is inevitable, but by technology, I suppose we do not limit ourselves to internet. Technology can be other things also. So even before this pandemic set in, there are institutions which have moved on to what is called blended learning using animated videos, etc. So that is, but moving totally to technology raises the question in my mind of a digital divide, of achieving the objectives of the NEP as stated earlier, of personality development. You cannot develop personality through 100% technology and lack of face-to-face contact. But as just examples of how we can do it is one, use of simulators in the engineering field and in the scientific field. A lot of simulators are being used. And I would like to end with, I find it fascinating even today to watch, this videos which keep coming on the WhatsApp to us on cancer's videos. And he handles a whole gamut of issues ranging from geopolitics to turbine technology, and I find it fascinating. I think we need more people like him to make, like what somebody said, I think it was Dr. Jitin who said that, how do you get the student to come and say, I want to learn? I think we need more of that kind.
Thank you, Dr. Malini. Let me move over to Dr. Sabu. So quickly, your thoughts on role of technology and tools.
My suggestion is we must use technology wherever you can utilize it. Technology for teaching process, technology for learning process, technology for evaluation process, technology for research, technology for consultancy, technology for extension. You see, my university has around 400,000 students, including all the colleges, and we conduct 15,000 examinations. So if you have a complete learning management system, student life cycle management system, which is assisted with technology, we can do things much faster. We are moving in that direction. And if you look at the teaching and learning process, we have already adopted the hybrid model. We have moved courses. We are using Swayam platform. And we are giving training to the faculty members, continuous faculty development in the campus. And we taught them digital pedagogy. And we have utilized the Moodle platform. So my suggestion is, wherever you can use technology, we must use technology. And I can tell you one more example. We have started joint degree. My students take offline and online courses in my campus, and they take, online classes with other universities abroad, and the credit is transferred to MGU. And we are going to give joint degrees. Therefore, it will be extremely useful, extremely nice to use technology wherever you can use. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sabu. Finishing comments from you, Dr. Vidyash Deshpande. Yeah, on technology and trends.
Yeah. I think, see, first of all, there's digital tools that are there. They are meant to maximize the student's ability to create products and to solve the problems. Basically, these tools expand opportunities for expression for a student. And that is what I think, in very, very simple terms, is the importance of these tools. Because if you might have a lot of to express, but if you have the tools to be able to express that more effectively, if somebody like me, if writes so poorly, but because of a word processor, it helps me to not show the world how poor my handwriting is. I mean, that's a very simple low-end example, but the point I am trying to make is that hence digital tools are very, very critical to provide that voice to the creativity and the expression of an individual. In this case of our discussion, a student. That's first part. Second part is about the online learning. I think it was the biggest experiment that we all ran, and we all ran it very, very successful. So I don't think there are too many of the people who suffered from that experiment, maybe initially, but definitely we all improved on that. The most important thing is, I think there are also different perspectives to look at of online, and every time we can't get into a debate. In the good old times, when there was Sridevi and Jayaprada, you couldn't get into the debate of who was better. I mean, they were both in their own right what they were. So in the same way, you can't debate between, let's say, an online education and offline education, and then if you are not satisfied with either of them, then you say, okay, we have hybrid. I mean, it's very difficult to debate that, where each has its own virtues. And in the given virtue, I think we'll have to also explore the virtues of online education. I find, like, for example, a very simple virtue that I would like to share and end, because I think we are running out of time. The simple virtue is that typically when the students are in a campus and in a classroom, they're part of one environment and they all become one. And to an extent that many of them lose their individuality. Versus a student sitting in the home or a faculty sitting in the home. And since we all have students from all parts of the country and maybe all around the world also, different countries, we get those different perspectives in a same conversation, which otherwise, just because of the weight of the environment that the learner is in, they don't get voiced enough. So there might be these different perspectives that we might have to explore, and then use the medium of education which effectively serves that purpose of that particular type of education, rather than trying to sit in judgment of which is better and what are the pros and cons of either of the systems.
Thank you, Dr. Deshpande. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you all, talking about varieties of topics ranging from what is creativity, how do you breed creativity, digital first, and more often than not, creating India as a superpower from a knowledge standpoint, and implement innovative ideas to drive and foster growth. With that, I'd like to finish my evening session for today. Let's all pray for each other. Please stay safe, and remember, science will win. Thank you so much. God bless India. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Wonderful meeting. Thank you.